All right, back to a Cleveland courtroom right now. Ariel Castro set to be officially sentenced for crimes against these three women he held captive for a period of 10 years or more. On the stand right now is Josh Barr. He's a forensic scientist with the prosecutor's office. He just showed the court a gun, a .357 Magnum that Ariel Castro kept inside the house and threatened those women with. He also he's talking about the weight of the chains found in the house. Let's listen to a bit of his testimony
on this
now.
case, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you estimate how many people worked on this case from your organization?
I can't give an exact estimate. I mean, there was basically every section of the laboratory was involved. There was a huge amount of evidence.
What other sections do you have in your laboratory?
We've got latent prints, we've got forensic biology, DNA, trace evidence.
And there were hundreds of pieces of evidence in this case, is that correct?
That's correct.
It was also your organization that determined the paternity of the minor child that was found in the home, is that correct?
Yes, to my knowledge.
And to your knowledge, the paternity was established that Ariel Castro was the father of the minor child found in the home?
Yes.
All right, we're going to step away because I think we have the picture of Ariel Castro's gun to show you. It looks like an old gun to me, .357 Magnum. It was in it's in that box that's sitting on the witness stand there. But we do have a picture of it. We're going to turn that in a second. I want to go to Douglas Berman. He's in Columbus, Ohio. He is an Ohio State law professor and expert on sentencing hearings. Douglas, this is a very detailed sentencing hearing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And my sense is the prosecutors recognize that because of the plea deal, this is their one opportunity to lay before the court and really the state and the nation and the world kind of all of the specifics of this just almost inconceivable crime. And I think that's part of what they're trying to make sure gets done through this presentation, that the lasting image is not of just Ariel Castro apologizing or saying whatever he plans to say, but of showcasing to the world just, how horrific this crime and all of its consequences were, which, candidly, it's still hard for me to get my mind completely around.
I'm sure a lot of people are with you, Douglas. I am. For prosecutors, though, Tanya, they're walking this fine line because they can't let too many details out, right?
Well, I mean, there's probably a limit as far as the judge is concerned. I mean, this isn't a trial, so, you can't put up the entire trial in a sentencing hearing. But I agree with the professor. I mean, this is history. This is an important case to this community. And the world wants to know. Criminal proceedings are public proceedings. These prosecutors are public servants. Tim McGinty is an elected district attorney. And what he's doing right now, he's telling his constituents, look, this is the work that we did in this case. We were ready to go.
All right, let's listen to this testimony. This is a former detective, and he's talking about Amanda Berry. Let's listen.
At this time, Ariel Castro physically restrained her with a chain that was attached to the center support pole, the basement, put plastic ties on her wrists. It was at this time that Gina DeJesus was first sexually assaulted. During this interview, Georgina DeJesus described a repeated pattern of being sexually, physically, and emotionally assaulted by Ariel Castro during the entire time she was held captive.
Did she tell you about the escape on May 6th?
She did. She said on May 6, 2013, when they escaped, she heard Jocelyn Berry running up and down the stairs, saying, Daddy left, went to Grandma's house. She states that she was just going to lay still and not do anything because she was afraid it could be a trap and that Ariel Castro could be outside waiting for him.
So now you've wrapped up your interviews at Metro. You've got a snapshot of the incredible story of survival, right?
Yes.
And how do you continue your investigation? What do you do?
I interviewed Ariel Castro. I visited the crime scene. I read dozens of reports that were completed by various law enforcement agencies. I examined hundreds of photographs. I reviewed hundreds of pieces of physical evidence that were taken from the house. I conducted follow-up interviews with the victims. I reviewed written materials kept by the victims during their years of captivity. I consulted with the prosecutor's office.
All right, that was that former detective testifying moments ago, informing the court and all who's listening some of the horrors that went on inside that house. Paige, you had an interesting thought while we were listening to that detective. You said this could all backfire for the state of Ohio. Why?
Right. Well, you can go too far. I understand the district attorney wants to get all this evidence out in front of the people. Everybody can see how bad this guy is. But some folks may start asking themselves, look, if he's this bad, if what he did was this awful, why did you let him plead? Why aren't we pursuing the death penalty in this case? So you got to walk a fine line. Let people know what happened, but don't push it so much that your deal looks like a bad deal for the people of this state.
Well, you know, we suppose that the state of Ohio agreed to this plea deal to spare the victims more pain, right? But you're right, as you listen to this, you do wonder. And Dr. Jeff, I'm sure the victims were consulted before this plea deal was agreed upon by all parties, but still.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, I'm sure they were consulted. But remember when they put that video out, Carol, they talked about the fact that they wanted to move on. And Michelle Knight, in particular, very strongly said that she had forgiven this monster, not so much for him, but for herself, so that she could move on. And that's the important thing here. These women do not want to go through this whole trial, this whole process, and so they are willing to move on, and part of that is this plea deal.
Okay, on the stand right now is an FBI agent, because the FBI was called into this case because it involved kidnapping. So he's talking about arriving at the house, and you can see the image there. So let's listen to what he has to say.
Perimeter further up the street in both directions. There was a Cleveland EMS unit stationed in front of the house. Detective Graves took me to the back of the ambulance, and when they opened the door, inside the ambulance was immediately recognizable to me to be Gina DeJesus and Amanda Berry. I did not have a familiarity with Michelle Knight, but I also noticed her as well as Amanda Berry's daughter in the ambulance.
Does that moment stand out for you as an investigator?
I'll never forget it.
Did you have any conversation with them at that moment in time?
My conversation was very limited at that point.
Where did you turn your attention?
My attention turned to making sure that the scene had been secured, and then to the investigation that was to ensue.
As the agent on scene representing the Violent Crime Task Force, did you have resources at your disposal that you could activate?
I did.
Tell us about that.
We notified the task force that basically an all call, everybody was needed, made the appropriate notifications through my chain of command, and we requested the assistance of our evidence response team, that would be the FBI's evidence response team, through our team leader, Special Agent Chris Garnett. We had a task force officer, John Morgan, who is a Cuyahoga County Sheriff's deputy, begin writing warrants for...
All right, we're going to step away and take a break. We'll be back with more from Cleveland.
DNA to be executed.